All right, fellas. Thank you for your patience. Same story every week. Sometimes I hit start and it works. Sometimes I hit start and it doesn't work, but we are here. I think this is a pretty great showdown slate, potential to be one of the best showdown slates of the season, but there are some chalk pieces that could make this not a great showdown slate for us. We'll get into that. Rear, Eli, appreciate you guys being here early. I want to go over some quick injury news before we get into it. The main thing is, let me pull this up. We have two offensive linemen on the Kansas City Chiefs that are unlikely to play today. And that's a pretty big hit, as we've seen all season. Missing key offensive line pieces is not great for the offense. So that's going to be a slight hit to KC, but we still like the Chiefs side plenty. Noah Gray was questionable. He had a concussion, but he did practice all week, so we're expecting him to play. Nico Remigio is out. And then on the Houston side, they just Jalen Reed. I think he's their free safety. He's out. Kamari Lassiter is questionable, one of their cornerbacks. So could be a slight hit to Houston's defense as well. I don't think that that's enough to cancel each other out, though. The KC hit is definitely a lot bigger, not having two of their starting offensive linemen. Who's the best Texans pass catcher option behind Collins tonight? Good question, Eli. So one of the top options on the slate in the flex in particular, he's actually pulling some pretty decent captain ownership too. This is a bit of a misprice for Dalton Schultz. He's seen 8 targets in what 4 out of the last 5 games, which is pretty significant volume. These are really strong fantasy scores. So I mean, he should be probably like 7,400. He's very popular. He's going to be one of the most popular flex plays, but I think the field is correct in getting to him, pretty heavily. He looks awesome. So Dalton Schultz is going to be a top option, but I want to throw out Jaden Higgins as kind of the pivot off of Dalton Schultz. You can play them both in the same lineup. That's fine. But Higgins is $400 more expensive. He's projected for about half the ownership of Schultz. And I mean, his target share has been pretty strong too. We're pretty interested in Higgins as the wide receiver two here behind Nico Collins. So I like getting to both of these guys. I'll mention Christian Kirk and Jalen Knoll. The model doesn't mind Christian Kirk as kind of a little pivot piece. Yeah, he probably has pretty high potential to give us 1.6 fantasy points tonight, but there is a small percent chance that catches a touchdown, gives us a score that we're looking for. And at his low ownership, he's one of the low owned pieces that we're comfortable mixing it at a reasonable rate. Jalen Knoll's a little bit tougher just because he doesn't draw that many targets, but I want to say 2 of these were red zone targets in the last few weeks. So if he has some potential, to get a red zone target, then that helps him a lot. He's only $1,000. We do have other value plays. We don't have to get there, but he is an option and he allows us to fit another stud in our lineup. Happy Sunday, Geek Hippie, Space Donut. How are we winning some money tonight? Yeah, it's going to be a interesting showdown. We just went over the Houston receivers real quick. So it's interesting when I ran lineups this morning that I saw the Houston side is going to be more popular. Builds are going to lean towards Houston 4-2, and Houston 5-1 is actually pretty popular tonight. Kind of makes sense. I just pointed out a bunch of strong value plays that we can get to. Even CJ Stroud isn't projected for that much ownership. His price is pretty reasonable. Woody Marks is not projected for much ownership. I think he's a pretty awesome play as the starting running back here. But Nick Chubb is so cheap today at 3,400. He shows up pretty well on the model for his price. And it just compared to a lot of the other cheap guys we're looking at, I know he hasn't scored many touchdowns this season, but it seems like he probably has the highest potential to score a touchdown out of these guys down here. It's pretty straightforward. He gets a carry on the 3-yard line and he punches it in. So we're going to be interested in Nick Chubb at his very minimal ownership, especially if most of the field is going to get to Dalton Schultz and Jaden Higgins as their value pieces. This is like kind of direct leverage, and we're saving a bit of salary too, so we can probably get to a stronger captain. Cade Stover's the backup tight end on Houston. He's a punt. I don't even know how much he costs. Yeah, a couple of these targets. One of these was a red zone target in these last couple of weeks, so that's a little bit interesting. Not terribly interested, as you guys know if you watch the show. These cheap guys are just I mean, they've been scoring a lot on these showdowns, but the model's not really into Cave Stover today. He has a minimum rating, but just wanted to mention that since he will be on the field. Probably gets a target or two tonight. Cade Stover, low-key sneaky punt. It's possible. You can just double check his ownership. I mean, we have him projected for 0%. Probably comes in like 1% owned, but he is the lowest ranked play in the model overall. So just keep that in mind. Let's talk about the Kansas City side real quick, and then we'll get into some lineups here. So I already mentioned Kareem Hunt. Maybe I haven't mentioned it yet, but Kareem Hunt is the man here. We saw Isaiah Pacheco return from injury last week. He played 30% of snaps. Kareem Hunt played 64. Now, earlier in the season, Isaiah Pacheco was mostly playing the majority of snaps. There was one game where Kareem Hunt played more, but in the weeks that Pacheco missed, he missed 3 games. They were on bye for one of them. Kareem Hunt played 70 to 80% of snaps. He played 64% of snaps last week. He still got a pretty strong workload, and I believe he got 100% of the red zone carries. Yeah, he got 4 red zone carries last week to Isaiah Pacheco's 0. On the season, I know Pacheco's missed some time, but Kareem Hunt has more than twice as many red zone carries, and so it's a pretty big deal. We have confidence the Chiefs can push the ball down the field. Getting to Kareem Hunt tonight, I think we just gotta hope that Andy Reid is tightening up the rotation. Brashard Smith only played 4 snaps last week. I don't know that he's in play too much today. At least maybe you can consider him. The field isn't really going to be on him, so I guess that is an option. But the Chiefs are like almost in full-on panic mode. They basically have to win every single game for the rest of the season. So pretty important to just put the ball in your best player's hands. Right now, it does look like Kareem Hunt is clearly the best running back in Kansas City. So I'm a little confused why his ownership is projected to be so low. We have 3% captain and 15% flex ownership for Kareem Hunt on DraftKings, 5% MVP. That makes a little bit of sense. He's more expensive over there. But he's projected for 17% in the flex on FanDuel, especially with this low scoring game. We are going to favor the running backs a little bit more over on FanDuel, but I think Kareem Hunt's an awesome play. And the same kind of goes for Woody Marks. He's a little bit more expensive, and he hasn't quite been doing it, but his ownership is also under 20%. The model really likes both of them. So these are 2 plays I want to get over the field on. I mean, Woody Marks is only projected for 11% ownership on DraftKings, but he is projected for 31% ownership on FanDuel. So that seems a little bit more correct to me. I mean, this is a lot of opportunity for someone that the field doesn't really want to get to. We have the value plays to fit this guy in without sacrificing too much else in our lineup. And so I think they're both pretty strong flex plays. They're okay at captain and MVP as well. Probably a little bit stronger at MVP, although we are getting a discount on Kareem Hunt over on DraftKings. Yeah, Hunt has that. He has actually. Let me double check this. I was a little bit surprised because I had thought that he was getting a little bit more opportunity in the pass game. I mean, he's getting 2-3 targets a week. That's enough. Yeah, that's enough for us to be interested. And like you mentioned, if the Chiefs are somehow down to start out this game or they're playing from behind, again, what does Pacheco give you that Hunt doesn't? So, going to be a big fan of a Kareem Hunt for the Chiefs tonight. Is he a sneaky captain play? He's projected for under 5% ownership. I think he's fine. Yeah, he's kind of in an awkward salary range over on DraftKings for captain. Let me just clear this. Like Kareem Hunt, the guys around him, Xavier Worthy, Woody Marks, you get a little bit more expensive, and you get up to the captains that most of the field is going to be playing. So you'll have a little bit of a different lineup construction, which I think is always great. Who's tonight's Flournoy? Who is tonight's Flournoy? Well, Nico Collins hopefully is not going to get hurt. I'm a pretty big fan of Nico Collins at captain and MVP tonight. He's the second best play on the slate behind Rashee Rice. Rashee Rice is in a tier of his own today, just like broke the model on DraftKings anyway. Still number 1 play on FanDuel. Hopefully Rashee doesn't get hurt. But like the low-owned receiver, I'm actually going to say Christian Kirk. The model's pretty into him, and we've seen a couple of weeks ago he had the potential to pull a few extra targets. Where's my boy? I mean, 0 targets last week. Let me just double check how many snaps he played. But this is the guy I think that probably will have the most opportunity that the field's not really looking at. Higgins is pulling some ownership. Jalen Noel, as I showed you, like it's tough to project him for more than 1 to 2 targets. But Christian Kirk, he played 50% of snaps last week. He just didn't draw a target. His snap share has been pretty strong. Usually plays about twice as many snaps as Jalen Knoll. And then I almost forgot about the other receiver here, Xavier Hutchinson. Similar boat. The model slightly prefers Christian Kirk, I believe. Let me just double check that. Yeah, the model slightly prefers Kirk over Hutchinson, but this is another possible Flournoy, I suppose. He's only projected for 4% ownership, pretty great price, and this is his captain price. He's 3K in the flex. Let me double check this. I mean, Hutchinson is actually playing more snaps than Christian Kirk on a week-to-week basis. Every single week for the past 5 weeks, he's outsnapped him by a few. Not by much, but playing more than 50% of snaps. Hutchinson, again, yeah, like he went this week with 0 targets, but every other week, 5 targets or 0 targets. I mean, this is a player at 4%. If you're making a large set of lineups, especially, I think you just kind of have to take the risk and play him more than 4%. His median projection isn't really going to like impress anyone, I guess, but his ceiling case, just for the price, the ownership, and the potential for, multiple targets, I think we have to be interested. In terms of red zone targets for Houston, though, it was pretty interesting because after Nico Collins and Dalton Schultz, everyone is kind of just like mixed in, I guess. No one else really stands out. Woody Marks has twice as many red zone carries as, or opportunities, I should say, compared to Nick Chubb this season. But as for the receivers, Nico Collins has 16 red zone opportunities, red zone targets. Dalton Schultz has 8 red zone targets. But after that, Higgins has 7, Hutchinson has 7, Christian Kirk has 6, Knoll has 6. Even Cade Stover has 4. No, I'm sorry, that's incorrect. I double checked that. Cade Stover had 1 last week, I think. But those receivers, they all have 6 or 7 red zone targets. It's hard to know who's going to get them on a weekly basis. Like from the last 3 weeks, Christian Kirk has 5 total compared to the other guys all only having 2. So maybe that's something, but he did have 0 last week. It's just really hard to pick any one of these secondary Houston receivers out of a hat, but I think we want to mix them in. They're all kind of underowned. So if you're making a set of 150, it should be a little bit easier to do. If you're only making 1 or 3 lineups, it's really hard to just pick one of these guys. But if you mix in Christian Kirk or Xavier Hutchinson into one of your 3 lineups, I think that's probably enough to get a little bit different, especially if you're rolling with the Mahomes or Rice captain. If you play Marks or Hunt at captain, should you play both QBs or the acute opposing QB? So this is an interesting one too, because I talk about playing for the under on the show pretty frequently. We lay out some strategies to do that in the plug. The total today is what, 41.5? Yeah, we're at 41.5. Kansas City's 4.5-point favorites. The field is kind of recognizing that KC defense is projected for 40% flex ownership on DraftKings. It's one of the highest I've ever seen. 34% over on FanDuel, and they're actually projected for 4% captain ownership as well, which like 4% is 4%, but I don't really know how interested I am in doing that. Even this 40% in the flex, it makes sense because of the lower total, and we can still play for the under. It's definitely possible this game goes under that 41.5. But something I'm interested in this week is actually playing for the over and trying to get away from that Kansas City DST a little bit. Now, it's tough because they're only 4K, and below 4K, the best options are we're probably punting off on one of these guys, Nick Chubb, Christian Kirk, Xavier Hutchinson. And, for what it's worth, the Chiefs, I don't know that their projection today is higher than those guys. The Chiefs defense is higher than all those guys on the model, which is pretty interesting. But at 40% ownership, I'd like to find ways to get away from that. And one way is to just play for the over. So maybe play one running back max in your lineup, and then we can try it with both quarterbacks. Was that question with Marks or Hunt at captain? Let's try it with a Hunt at captain since he is on the favored team. We'll run Mahomes. We can fit in Rice still. Both QBs. It's really hard to fit in CJ Stroud even with our value plays. Let's see if we can make it work though. Like we'd probably have to utilize one of these guys that's 1 or 2K. Let's do Christian Kirk. Leaves us 4,500. Yeah, we can actually get to a Chiefs D or Pacheco, which I know I just ragged on Chiefs D for like 2 full minutes, but Kareem Hunt, very low owned captain. And I'm wondering if this is going to be a combo that the field isn't going to get to as much as they should, considering the Chiefs defense ownership. Not just Kareem Hunt, the captain, but like overall in the flex as well. And I'm wondering about Harrison Butker's ownership is like 23% compared to the Chiefs projected for 40. Now that's half. We've seen the winning defense's kicker be paired with him in the winning lineup pretty frequently on showdowns, and I think that's one spot that the field isn't really getting to as much as they should. Harrison Butker looks fine. He's a little lower in the model than we'd like today, but if we're playing for the under and he gives us 7 or 8 fantasy points, like we're not necessarily upset about that. 7 or 8 is plenty if there's not much scoring going on in this game. It's kind of hard to do even with the Hunt captain if you're trying to fit in both quarterbacks, but I guess this is kind of playing for the under a little bit. I mean, we can sneak Butker in there instead of Christian Kirk. And get to like Xavier Worthy. It's probably a little bit too much salary to leave, though. It's a little bit of an awkward. Also, this is 6 KC players. Interesting. It's interesting that the field's going Houston heavy tonight. I mean, I get it, but I don't know. If I'm hand building intuitively, I'm probably just going to be leaning towards Kansas City regardless of the ownership. So it is an interesting one. Yeah, I doubt it's going to be a 2 QB showdown. With how much the field is forcing in this Chiefs defense, though, it could be a low-owned combo playing CJ Stroud and Patrick Mahomes in the same lineup, especially with some of these value plays we can get to. Like, I want to try one here with, let's run Mahomes captain. He is the most popular captain MVP tonight. It's projected for 30% captain ownership on DraftKings, 40% FanDuel MVP. This is a spot where we can go all in on Patrick Mahomes. We could fade Patrick Mahomes, or we could just set up our exposures like regular and not, go extreme one way or the other. But Mahomes captain, we'll do Rashee Rice in the flex. I want to see if we can fit Nico Collins in here as well. We're going to fade CJ Stroud. I want to see if we can still fit in Kareem Hunt. It's going to be really hard. I don't think we can. Not really. I mean, we can try what it looks like with Pacheco as the pivot here, I guess. I mean, Chiefs defense, just going to default to that. Leaves us 4,600. We'd have to leave some salary, which is fine since we're playing Mahomes at captain. We're not necessarily playing like a super low-owned play in here, maybe Pacheco, but maybe we want to run this back with Higgins or Schultz. Let's do Dalton Schultz. Having 2 Houston pass catchers is fine, even if we're not getting to CJ Stroud. This is where it gets a little awkward because this is like if the field is trying to force in these 3 guys and then Dalton Schultz, who is probably the best flex play, they're going to be stuck on a lot of these combos down here unless they're going down to a player like Jalen Knoll that leaves us 6,600. Get up to Xavier Worthy. It's a pretty nice 3-3 right here. 3 pass catchers without CJ Stroud, though. We'll try to do something that's not that. So maybe we get rid of Dalton Schultz here. Harrison Butker would be okay. Fairbairn, Houston's kicker, works too. Maybe we don't want to do CJ Stroud. Which Houston player do we want besides Nico Collins? Let's do Higgins. We probably don't have to get to Knoll now. Try Travis Kelce with Rashee Rice. We'll get rid of Worthy. 4,100. Harrison Butker and Hutchinson. It's an idea. Maybe we could go to Fairbairn, Nick Chubb. Could also just go with Chiefs defense. This would work better in a smaller field. There's not really a low-owned guy in here, and since Mahomes is the most popular captain, this is probably going to be a pretty duped lineup if you're running this in any kind of large field. Maybe if the small field is a little bit larger in size, it's going to be duped there too. You could run Texans D. It's an option. Double defense. Don't love it, though, even with the low total. Hunt captain. Yeah, let's try another Hunt captain lineup. Hunt Nico Collins, Schultz, Mahomes, Kelsey, Houston, DT. So fading Rashee Rice. Rashee Rice is projected for 21% captain ownership, 45% flex. Over on FanDuel, he's more expensive, but he's only 12% MVP, 37% flex. So that's a pretty, like when we're considering getting low-owned guys, if we're playing the high-owned captain, especially if it was Mahomes' captain, like if you're fading Rice, you're fading half the field, right? A guy who's pulling more than half the ownership. So you got to consider that too. That like kind of counts as playing a low-owned guy, contributes anyway. Houston DST. Houston DST against Kareem Hunt captain is a little bit awkward. I don't know that I'm going to get to many lineups running this, but it is an option, yeah. Schultz, and then you wanted Schultz. Yeah, we have the option to get to Higgins or Schultz here. Either one would be great. Swap Kelsey for Rice, Schultz for Chubb. I like it. So we already have our low-owned captain. We don't really have to worry about ownership in the rest of the lineup as much, especially if we're going to run the opposing DST versus our captain, Nick Chubb, Christian Kirk, Xavier Hutchinson. Yeah, like playing one of these guys as your last guy in feels pretty good. Given that we have Kareem Hunt at captain here, it probably makes a little more sense to take the shot on Christian Kirk or Hutchinson, but Nick Chubb would be perfectly fine too. See what else I have for you guys. Remember, I'll be here for another, 5 to 10 minutes. If you have any questions, throw them in the chat. We can go over it. I almost forgot to mention, we do have one underperforming wide receiver on the slate, Xavier Worthy. This dude has left so many air yards on the field this season. I don't know. We want him to catch a really long touchdown, right? He's getting some opportunity to do that. He's just not taking advantage of it. The model thinks he's fine. He's not pulling heavy ownership today. He's in the 20% in the flex. So I think Xavier Worthy is a pretty good option, especially being underperforming. We don't necessarily have to play him instead of Rice. We can play him in the same lineup. I mean, let's build one on a FanDuel here, actually. So it's kind of the dummy I built over on FanDuel. Rashee Rice versus Mahomes. Is that enough to... Yeah, you could play Mahomes at MVP here too, but Kansas City defense, Harrison Butker, one of our favorite flex plays over on FanDuel too, and Dalton Schultz, and then round out the lineup with Woody Marks. This is a pretty strong small field lineup. Also forgot to mention low risk isn't really viable tonight because like we'd have to fade Nico Collins and Rashee Rice, which is kind of uncomfortable. And then both teams' running backs are like, while Woody Marks and Kareem Hunt are the lead backs, they don't have a chokehold on the position. Things could happen. And regardless, even if you played Woody Marks and Kareem Hunt in this lineup, you don't really have enough salary left to, fill out the last two spots with reasonable cash plays, right? I mean, Nick Chubb could be the value play. If we could get up to one of the defenses or a kicker or even Dalton Schultz, it might be okay. But without that, and I didn't even put a CJ Stroud in here. So, yeah, just going to be really tough. Maybe a little bit easier on FanDuel. On DraftKings, it's just not really going to be doable either way. I mean, here, yeah, you could do it with a Chiefs defense and Nick Chubb, but again, you're still fading Rashee Rice and Nico Collins, so just prefer to stay away from low risk tonight. We're going to run Patrick Mahomes with Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy in the flex. We'll get Dalton Schultz in this first dummy to run it back with. Leaves us 6,800 per player. Chiefs defense is even cheaper over here. Let's try with Chiefs D. Leaves us 7,200. Don't really want to get to Pacheco. Could get to the Houston kicker. Could get to Harrison Butker. Try with Harrison Butker. Let's just get up to Jaden Higgins. It's a little bit better. Another idea is, I don't know that we want to fade Rashee Rice. This is kind of an insane workload. But let's say we do get away from Rashee Rice a little bit. I haven't mentioned Travis Kelce too much, but he's been pulling a pretty solid workload. His snap share's been up. Maybe it was slightly elevated last week because Noah Gray was out. But it's been strong all season. These are really strong target numbers. So Travis Kelce instead of Rashee Rice, we're still going to have the underperforming wide receiver Xavier Worthy. We can round this out with a Kareem Hunt. Instead of Harrison Butker, since we're running this lineup, we could do a Kansas City defense. Might make a little bit more sense. Want to see what it looks like if we try to fit in Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce. We're only left with 1,800. We can get to the punt, Cade Stover, or more likely we just get away from Kareem Hunt a little bit, Harrison Butker, and yeah, we can take a punt on Christian Kirk, Xavier Hutchinson, leaving a little bit of salary. This is probably one of the stronger options. If we get to Christian Kirk here, we're still leaving 400, which is fine, and Christian Kirk is lower owned. But it probably evens out, actually, leaving the extra salary with the slightly higher owned player in Hutchinson versus the leaving little salary into the very low owned Christian Kirk. So these are some ideas to still play Patrick Mahomes captain or MVP. Schultz, considering who he is, yeah, he is projected for 8% captain ownership. That sounds like a lot. Like it's just so much. Let's take a look at what the default lineup would look like here. Schultz captain. I imagine we're just going to jam in Rice, Mahomes, Nico Collins. We can't get to CJ Stroud. There's not really a punt under 1K. We can't even get to our Jalen Knoll 1K punt. I don't know that Clyde Edwards-Helaire sees the field. I guess Ogumbawale. I haven't mentioned him. He's also a punt. Most weeks he's not going to touch the football, but he's $400. Maybe this ends up being a very low-scoring game. The fantasy scoring's condensed, so any of these punts just makes the lineup work. But try to get away from that a little bit. Really want to have CJ Stroud in here, though, with the Dalton Schultz captain. Maybe we can get away from Nico Collins if we're doing that. I mean, I feel like it's wide open for the last two spots in the lineup. You can do whatever you want. Besides Nico Collins, I guess. I mean, we can throw in Kareem Hunt, leaves us 3,300 to get to Christian Kirk or Hutchinson. We can throw in, don't want to do the Chiefs defense on this one, but we can do Texans defense. They're going to be they're still high owned for a defense, projected for just under 20%, but compared to Kansas City's defense, the ownership it's a pretty significant difference. Houston DST is only projected for 8% flex ownership on FanDuel. Maybe that's a low owned spot we consider a little bit more than the field too. Getting to Texans D leaves us 7,100. Xavier Worthy seems fine. Patrick Mahomes with two pass catchers. CJ Stroud with Dalton Schultz captain. Texans defense 4,100. We could swap it out for Chiefs defense. You could run that. Chubb, Kirk, Hutchinson. Yeah, we're going to end up with a lot of, if you're hand building, probably a lot of lineups with the last man in from this group right here. And I think they're all pretty solid options. If you want to squeeze in Travis Kelce, 1,900, it's probably not going to be doable. No, Gray, not great. Would I consider a brief water sip? Dude, I have my coffee, I have my sparkling water, and I just forget, and I get so, wrapped up in what I'm talking about. I get very excited during these streams. So, do I feel better fading Collins and playing a Schultz and Kirk, for example? I don't know that I necessarily feel better about it. Nico Collins has been good, right? These are like kind of insane target numbers as well, but it would be the leverage option to get to Kirk. Like Dalton Schultz is going to be very owned by the field, 51% in the flex, 8% in captain. That's like 60% of lineups on DraftKings that he's going to be in. Kind of similar over on FanDuel, 54% in the flex, but only 2% FanDuel MVP. It's a little bit interesting. Just let me double check Christian Kirk's. I mean, Christian Kirk, we now have him projected for 1% flex ownership on DraftKings, 2% on FanDuel. So, yeah, if you're playing Patrick Mahomes or Rashee Rice captain, I think we're pretty interested in running it back with a little bit more Christian Kirk than the field. I mean, he's projected for 1% ownership, so he comes in 2 or 3%. If you're making a set of 20 lineups, you can play Christian Kirk in one of them, and you're going to be well over the field, and you can play him in two of them and just have massive leverage if he happens to be the guy. I know it's only 2 lineups, but it does make a difference. Instead of fading Rice, was that in this one? This one we're fading Nico Collins over on FanDuel. we get our 1% play in Christian Kirk. We'll get our favorite flex play in Dalton Schultz. Leaves us 7,100 per player for two guys. Kareem Hunt and Xavier Worthy are pretty easy. Did I just lose connection again? I mean, if we ran the Chiefs defense, very popular, we could get to Nico Collins here, but it's a little bit awkward without those guys. Could just go CJ Stroud, leave 800 on the table, even better with Mahomes captain, the 1% Kirk. This is a good large field lineup. Maybe we get away from Chiefs DST and get up to, we can't get to the kickers. We can get to Fairbairn. Seems good too. Little 4-2 Houston with the Kansas City captain. You know, the truth, if I was a little younger, I might know what that meant. See if I had anything else to touch on from the plug. Weather's projected to be cold, so if you need another reason to lean into the under on an already low total game, then there's that combined with the Chiefs missing two starting offensive linemen. It's not great, but it is Patrick Mahomes. He's figured it out most of the season. I didn't mention Marquise Brown at all. I've been mentioning Christian Kirk a lot in this 3,200 range. His price is good, and just at the 1% ownership, you know, a lot of the field's going to be clicking on Xavier Hutchinson. This is a leverage spot. You probably should have more Hutchinson in your exposures than Kirk, though. Don't take it to mean that you should just play a ton of Christian Kirk tonight. Like I said, if you have him in one or two out of your 20 lineups, that's plenty. Hutchinson, we'd be interested in having in a few more of those lineups. Not Hutchinson, I'm sorry. Or Hutchinson too, but I meant to talk about Jaden Higgins, sorry. Higgins is projected for 20% ownership. Hutchinson also projected for very low ownership, so you could mix him into one or two lineups just like you do Kirk, and that would be fine. But Marquise Brown, so he's still on the field. He's like basically still the wide receiver 3 here. It's just that Rashee Rice is absorbing so much of the opportunity, and Travis Kelce's kind of next in line that it doesn't leave much room for anyone else. These are pretty poor target numbers, but I mean, we're always going to be interested in a receiver attached to Patrick Mahomes, right? So the model actually doesn't hate him. He's projected for minimal ownership. This is another punt you can get to if you want to get to a little bit heavier Kansas City. He's projected for 0% ownership on DraftKings, 1% in the flex on FanDuel. Another guy that you really don't want to mix in too much, but if you have him in one or two of your lineups, that's plenty. Mentioned Juju Smith-Schuster down here at 2K. Again, like it's probably a pretty common that he's not going to draw a single target tonight, but no one's really playing him. He's also projected for 1% ownership on both sites. Model doesn't like him at all, but at 2K, he's there. Yeah, I think that'll do it. I didn't throw Woody Marks into that many dummies, but I think he's a fine play at 8,400 if you can get him in there. Like everyone else we've been throwing in here looks pretty good. I'll mention CJ Stroud's captain and MVP ownership is pretty low, and I mean, he hasn't been great, but he's not awful. He's an option to mix in a captain and MVP as well. Xavier Worthy, underperforming wide receiver captain, we're always interested in, especially he's kind of around that Dalton Schultz price. So I mentioned Dalton Schultz was projected for kind of a heavy captain ownership tonight. That's a way to get like that kind of mid-range captain, but have a slightly different build since he costs a little bit more. Kickers both look good. I don't know. With this Chiefs defense, they're projected for 40% ownership. I think I've been telling you guys to play more defense than the field on every single showdown slate for like the last 2 months. Tonight, I'm not so sure. Over on FanDuel, they're still projected for 34% ownership. I don't know. Let me see how much I got in my run. I want to see how much captain ownership I got of the defense, if I got any at all. I did allow it because I didn't want to cross it out. I was curious what it would give me. I got 0. Yeah, so I got 0 captain MVP of the defenses. Seems correct to me. 4%'s a lot. The field's going to get there, though, so don't ignore it completely. I think it's a lot better as a flex play, but if you can somehow get away in the flex a little bit too, I think it's pretty good. On the model, the Chiefs are 4K. This is the captain price. Chiefs are 4K in the flex. The only value play ranked higher than the Chiefs defense is Nick Chubb. Plays rank similarly to the Texans defense, who's projected for half the ownership, and over on DraftKings and a quarter of the ownership over on FanDuel. That's a pretty solid option to get to the Texans defense side of this. I mean, Marquise Brown's 1,000 more. He's projected for 0 ownership. I already mentioned Kirk, Butker, Noel, Hutchinson. And so we have some options if you're trying to get away. It doesn't seem like the greatest play at 40%, but I understand it. I think leverage says we kind of want to find other options, though, and just hope that this game goes over. If you play a popular captain with Christian Kirk and have 200 left over, is that fine? Yeah, that's fine. If you're playing, like, for example, the largest contest, the flagship on DraftKings or FanDuel, whatever, and you just make the most obvious lineup with like Patrick Mahomes captain, and you have Kirk in there as the last guy, even though he's only 1% owned, it's probably still going to be duped. But don't let that be enough to like get you off of the lineup. You know what I mean? Like this would be the popular build: Mahomes, Rice, Dalton Schultz, CJ Stroud, leaves us 4,800 to get to Fairbairn. Like this is probably going to be duped a bunch in that large contest, even though Kirk is low owned. Like Fairbairn isn't low owned, but he's not high owned either. This left 0 though. If you're leaving 200, it's kind of the same thing as leaving 0. It's not too much. I wish I knew what was going on here. DST captain is going to be so duped. People are going to smash in every block. Yeah, that's one of my problems with it. People are going to rely on it a little too much. Let's just see what that would look like. Let's build it on FanDuel. And then I am going to get out of here in like 2 minutes. Not Texans, DST. We want to run it with Chiefs. I'll run one on DraftKings too, actually, since the salary is a little bit different. But we'll try it with Rice and Mahomes. We can fade Nico Collins here. Maybe we'll do Woody Marks, I guess. If we're playing Kansas City D at MVP, I think we're assuming that it's going under, right? Harrison Butker, pretty great pair. I think that maybe the field doesn't get to as much as they should with how heavy they're playing defense. I think you should probably play a little bit more Harrison Butker tonight if you're playing a lot of Chiefs defense. And this leaves us 9,400. I mean, we can leave 1,200 on the table. It's not my favorite option though. If you can spend more of the salary, that would be better. Like, I mean, who would we even try to get to up here? Kareem Hunt, 200 away. Maybe get away from Woody Marks. Have to play a Houston player, though. Jaden Higgins. Could be a random one. It's a little awkward over on FanDuel playing this Kansas City DST, but it's going to be more prevalent on DraftKings anyway. It's not going to be too owned over on FanDuel. We'll do, what's the field going to do? Dalton Schultz, Rashee Rice, Mahomes. We can fit in CJ Stroud, 7,400 to get to Kareem Hunt. Maybe instead of Dalton Schultz, you do Harrison Butker. I mean, this is going to be duped to hell tonight, right? Whether you're on the 5-1 Kansas City. Maybe this is a little bit different that the field's not going to get to as much, but this might be better than running it with Dalton Schultz in there. Getting the kicker. I imagine it's going to be a less owned combo than Chiefs DST and Schultz. Puka just caught another TD. Dope. I played Jamar Chase on the main slate. I'm actually cashing all my lineups at least. It's an interesting one with Chiefs DST. Like, what is the field going to do when they're doing this? They're just jamming in the most obvious plays. You got to do something a little bit different. Really like running Kareem Hunt and Harrison Butker if you are going that route. It's just a matter of what you do with these last 3 spots, and I don't really want to get rid of Mahomes or Rice either. Like, you have to play a Houston guy, right? CJ Stroud makes sense. Woody Marks, I guess, would make a little bit of sense too, but I'd rather just get to the quarterback if we have the salary for it. So don't love that Chiefs DST captain. Need the double Ds. It's so gross. The problem is how much salary are we leaving if we're doing that? We'll do max one quarterback. We'll keep Patrick Mahomes since we have Chiefs captain. Texans defense. I mean, we have $6,000 left. What do we even do with that? 11,200. Just get to Nico Collins. This would be fine. There's nothing wrong with this build. This is probably going to be duped to hell too, though. Even though we're leaving 1,400 here instead of Kareem Hunt, Travis Kelce. I think this build is better with Kareem Hunt than Travis Kelce if you're going to run this, but both could work. Is fading both QBs viable? It's viable. This is a low total. I don't know that I'm doing that too much tonight. The problem, like I just kind of showed you, we have the value plays in the salary that we don't have to intentionally fade the quarterbacks and get away from them, right? It's already a low total. It could possibly go under. Like it could possibly go over too, in which case we're going to want the quarterbacks. If it goes under, we're probably going to want at least one of the quarterbacks. I'm not a big fan of fading both quarterbacks tonight, but I guess it would be an option. I just don't know where you'd spend the salary. Like I guess we're running Woody Marks at captain, because if I'm running Rashee Rice at captain, I'm just going to play Patrick Mahomes in the flex almost every single time. I guess we're fading Nico Collins too. Kareem Hunt. If we're fading the quarterbacks, we probably want a defense in there, so we'll do Chiefs, Harrison Butker, Nico Collins. Like I guess this would be a reasonable build if you're not running a quarterback. Get both running backs, the top receiver from both teams, and then this little kicker defense combo from Kansas City. Well, that'll do it, fellas. That is my time. Appreciate you guys coming to the stream tonight. Hopefully tonight goes well for the Chiefs anyway. Get a little bit of leverage on the spots that we talked about, and we'll be back tomorrow.